welcome back to Troubleshooting Agile. Hi there, Jeffrey.
Hi, Squirrel.
So you've been messing around with the branding of something that I care about a lot, and you care a lot about too, which is our favorite conference, CITCON. And it now has new names and new logos and new all kinds of stuff. And I want to know what you're doing with my baby there, who is actually, of course,
your baby.
Yeah, exactly. It's, of course, your baby because you and PJ came up with it 20 years ago now or longer. But our listeners might not know what it is or why I would be attached to what it used to be and a little cautious about changes to it. Do you want to tell our listeners more about it?
Absolutely. And I think what I'm going to do is make sure I don't bury the lead here and start off with, what is it and when is it? So we're talking about a conference, CITCON AI. So CITCON AI is going to happen in Europe. I know you're excited. It's going to happen
that part
in
I'm very
Helsinki.
excited about. The AI part, you got to tell me more about that.
I definitely will. So it's happening in May 22nd and 23rd. And it's a very unusual conference. And I thought our listeners who haven't heard of it before, who haven't attended, would be interested and should really think about attending. And I'll tell you a little bit about why, and then also why we've changed the branding. So the astute among you, the very particular date-focused people, might recognize that May 22nd is a Friday and that May 23rd is a Saturday. And there's not a lot of conferences that happen Friday night and Saturday, because actually even the Saturday section doesn't start till 6 p.m. So this is a kind of outside of work hours conference, which is, I think, the biggest hint that this is going to be something a little bit different. And as you say, we've been doing this since 2006, so this is our 20th anniversary, our 21st year. And the thing about KitCon is it's a place where people are talking to each other. This is an open space event or an unconference. And what that means is that rather than being and sitting in chairs and having people talk to you with PowerPoints or even demos, you get into a room with other practitioners and talk about the topic that you've set for that session. And the session is one that you set on Friday night. So on Saturday you're attending the things that you care about because you voted for them and you chose your schedule. And we typically have about 5 different tracks. And so there's more than enough to choose from. In fact, the biggest thing people say is they really wish they could be in more than one room at a time because there's so many good conversations happening. So that's kind of
unfortunately, the C does not stand for cloning, so we are not able to actually put people in more than one room. But the thing that makes me so attached to it is the caliber of people who are there. So for example, you and PJ, who got this started 20 years ago, and this is of course where I met you back in 2006. So
that's right.
There are some pretty smart people who show up at KitCon. I'm going to do my very best. I have some family issues that might mean I can't come, but I'm going to do my very best to be there in Helsinki. Mm-hmm. And there are a number of other absolutely brilliant folks. I'm not going to name names because I'll leave somebody out and feel bad. There are amazing people who go to this, and you get to talk to them about anything under the sun. I mean, you can talk to PJ about beekeeping, which apparently he's an expert on, as well as continuous integration. So It's really worth encountering all these brilliant people.
Yeah. And I totally agree with you. And there's just amazing people show up, and the people are amazing, and they're not necessarily household names. There are people there who've written books, written articles, who are keynote speakers at other conferences, who do paid training, all kinds of, really experienced, wonderful people. And there's people who are quote unquote normal. But the thing is, no one who chooses to show up at a conference like this on a Saturday is normal. So what you have are people who are really enthusiastic on the topic. They really care about it, about how to do things better. And so just from that sort of selection bias, you end up with a really interesting set of people. And I've had just amazing conversations with people all over the world. We've done this in the U.S., we've done it in Europe, all over Europe. We've done it in Australia and New Zealand and Singapore and Hong Kong, and it's always been amazing. And I think it really comes down to this point that the people who are showing up are not the people who could get the travel report, the conference approval, but rather the people who cared enough to use their own time to be there. And I think that's why you end up with great conversations. But with that kind of background, this is true of all KitCons, but there's something different about this year, which is, you pointed out is maybe a little bit dubious, but why are we particularly saying KitCon AI? And that's, I got to say, is mostly my fault. So I think I wanted to at least explain to you, Squirrel, and you can, I can get your impression of like, is this a good idea or not? Um, and in one element is you already kind of mentioned this. The C in KitCon started off in 2006. It was Continuous Integration and Testing Conference, but we've been running this conference for 20 years. At the time we started in 2006, there was all kinds of question about, well, what is continuous integration? That was the most popular topic for the first half a dozen years, because all kinds of people would show up and they had never really heard of it. Now, 20 years later, there's a lot fewer questions about what is continuous integration and testing. People may not do it, or they may not do it the way that people say you quote unquote should, but there's fewer questions. And I think as an industry, we've really worked out a lot of patterns and popularized a lot of patterns of how to do continuous integration. And while there's great variation, there's fewer fundamental questions. In 2006, 2007, there were questions like, could this work on large teams? Could this work, and by large, we mean, more than 10 people. Could you do this on large projects? Could you do this in banking? Could you do this in, all kinds of different different domains? And how does it work when you start doing stuff in the cloud? How do the patterns change?
And we should just fill in listeners, because there are people who listen to us who don't do continuous integration, who aren't in software directly. And for those folks, just to remind everybody, continuous integration is a process where whenever you make a change to your software, you make the change to all of the software and you put the software live so people can try it out. This may not seem like a revolutionary idea, and if it doesn't, that's because of hard work by people like Jeffrey, who came along and said, hey, maybe it would be a good idea if we tried out the software before we gave it to everybody in the world. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
folks at companies like CrowdStrike don't seem to have learned that lesson. So look up CrowdStrike if your memory doesn't extend 2 years to when 500,000 Windows computers went down all at once. So continuous integration is a very good practice, gradually becoming normalized. And because it's become normalized, Jeffrey, I think a few years ago you decided not to call it KitCon anymore, rather not a continuous integration and testing conference,
Yeah.
but just KitCon, the name.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. And you made a good point there about not everyone knows what this means, and it's worth saying this, depending on our audience. Some of the people who are maybe developers or testers or people in ops will know this very well. Maybe they know it through DevOps or something else. But we also end up with people there who are, executives and business people who've been told like it's worth understanding what's going on and showing up. So we end up with a diverse array of people. So while most people are technical, not everyone is, but maybe they've been told
and they're
like
very, very welcome, those people who are
exactly.
not as technical.
Yeah, and that's right. Because I think one of the key ideas here is we do want and have always encouraged a wide range of people. Back in 2006, just getting developers and QA people at the same conference, conferring, which is what conferences are for, talking to each other, led to all kinds of amazing conversations, this cross-pollination. And in 2007, 2008, we started having more ops people show up, and then then the term DevOps became popular. And people understood like, yeah, having all these different subject matter experts talking together is really beneficial. But the thing that happened, this goes back to what you said about kind of the branding, that after, a dozen years, because it's open space and people are bringing whatever their current problems are, the topics diverged quite a bit. There was a lot more diversity of topics, whereas in the early days, it was really fairly narrowly focused directly on things around development practices, testing practices, deployment practices, and maybe you get stuff like monitoring, but it's all about how it all fit together in a sort of automated or semi-automated flow that you could tie back to continuous integration and testing. But the discussion topics became a lot more broad, and I think in part as repeat attendees gained a lot more experience. I think Squirrel, I don't remember how many you've been to, but probably 20,
I have
or
a
almost
complete
20.
collection of,
Yeah.
yeah, I have a complete collection of T-shirts from everything in Europe, 2006 to 2020. That virus thing kind of got in the way a little bit, but I certainly haven't missed many. And when I started, I could barely spell continuous integration, and now I teach people all about how to use it, just for that example. And there are lots of other fantastic tools and mechanisms that people have learned about or originated at KitCon. It's been a great source of knowledge and information, which is why I don't know why you want to mess around with it, Jeffrey. So why are you changing it all of a sudden? This is near and dear to my heart.
Well, I think it's really in part reflective of two things. One is I want for people to have a more accurate idea of what we're going to talk about. So in the same way we first started saying like de-emphasizing the continuous integration portion and started talking more about continuous improvement, that really the topic of the conference was about how to do things better more generally, had a lot of human-centric topics. I noticed that last year there were a lot more AI topics for the obvious reason that AI in development was becoming much more popular. And I've seen this the last couple of years. And in this year, I think there's really been a sea change, just an absolute step change in AI's use in coding. And I really expect that the question of how do we, and this is going actually in a sense back to our roots, how to continuously integrate the efforts of AI, how to test and deploy AI produced systems, or how to use AI in the development, integration, testing, deployment, monitoring process. In one sense, it's to me, this feels like it's going to be conversations much closer to the early days of KitCon, because I don't really have the evidence that this is really well understood. That I really feel like there's just a vast spread of practices. People are trying a whole range of different things. Some people are stuck where other people are, have figured out solutions. And there's a real chance for cross-pollination and a better understanding of what's the state of the art. What are the things that are known versus not known broadly? You know the phrase that the future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed. I think this year,
That's Arthur
I
C. Clarke, I think. We'll have it in the show notes.
yeah, I feel that's more true this year about AI in development than it has been, for the last dozen years in technology. I feel, that's what has me excited, and so therefore I wanted to make sure it was clear to people that this was likely to be the focus of a lot of the sessions. Now I'm saying this a bit as a guess because the whole point of the conference is that people are able to propose the topics, that they're able to say, here's what I want to talk about. And if people decide they want to talk about, as you said, beekeeping, well, that'll be proposed. If it gets enough votes, it'll be on the schedule. Anything that's on the schedule is because people have voted for it and said that they all agree that they want to talk about it. So, we'll have something like 25 sessions. We'll see what makes the top 25, but I feel pretty confident that there will be something in every time slot that's about, how do you integrate AI? Which model are you using? How do you solve this problem? And I'm really super excited to see that. And for me personally, I have some experiments I plan to run about, essentially taking some of the practices from extreme programming and what happens when you bring AI into that process. And I'm looking forward to sharing the results of my experimentation and hearing from others in May when we're there. So, having heard my pitch and understanding, Squirrel, what do you think? What's the?
Oh, I'm not convinced at all. No, I
Okay.
think I'm going to make it my mission to turn up in Helsinki if I possibly can. I'm really going to try hard. It's a beautiful city, and I'm keen to come back and to see all my old friends there. And I'm going to propose topics on human intelligence and human interaction, which I know, Jeffrey, you really like because you wrote a book on it with me. So I think there might be some motivation for some anti-AI or non-AI components. So if you're not very interested, or if it's not your thing, or you already know everything about it, you should still come to KitCon, because I will certainly hang out with you, and I will talk to you about trust conversations and briefing and back briefing and a whole bunch of other wonderful things. However, I will confess that I'm now writing a book as fast as I possibly can to try to keep up with the industry about how to use AI without chatting. So I also have a lot of opinions about that, and I'll probably do sessions on that topic. But at least it'll be a sort of curmudgeonly swimming against the tide type of AI, because way too many people open the chat window and just start typing stuff.
I love that you bring that up because it actually one of my favorite sessions ever was I think about 2008, and one of the big trends in 2008 was that was around the time that Scrum was just taking over the world, becoming absolutely dominant. All the job postings said you must be a certified Scrum Master and whatnot. And then the session that we had in Paris was is Scrum evil? And it was a very, very fun discussion. And I expect there'll be some of that sort of contrarian stuff in Helsinki. What are the limits of AI? When should you avoid AI? AI is considered harmful. That kind of stuff. And so
Excellent.
don't think you need to be on the AI bandwagon. Skeptics are encouraged to attend. I think we're actually even going back to the first KickCon, 2006. PJ and I were into continuous integration because PJ started the project Cruise Control, which people may have forgotten about, but it was one of the earliest continuous integration servers. And so we were talking about using these continuous integration servers as a foundational practice. And James Shore wrote, continuous integration with using a rubber chicken, and he was arguing about why you shouldn't be using these servers, why it was a perversion of what continuous integration meant. So contrary, positions have been something
And
from
he's
the
still
very
right,
beginning.
by the way.
That's right. That's right. Rubber chickens are still just as valuable as they were in 2006.
And we'll go into that another time, but I think what we want our listeners to take away as our biggest message is that there aren't a lot of places where you can have the kind of debate Jeffrey and I just have been having, and we have it in good fun and in good nature, and I'm sure I'm going to buy him a beer in Helsinki. But the point is that there's vigorous debate on these topics and very smart people who are having those vigorous debates, and you ought to be part of it. So
That's right.
we'd sure love to see as many of our listeners as we possibly can manage in Helsinki. Jeffrey will say the dates again, and will be in our show notes as well. Book your flights, book your train tickets, get out some snowshoes, whatever it is you're going to do. Get yourself to Helsinki, because we'd sure like to see you there, even if Squirrel is going to carry a sign that says change the name back.
That's right. So the dates there are Friday, May 22nd, starting at 6 p.m., and then going to Saturday, May 23rd, and wrapping up around 6 p.m.
Oh, we
So,
forgot something important. It's free. You don't have to pay anything.
oh yeah, there is that. And with that, when people register, they're allowed to donate. And I think it's worth saying that over the years, the voluntary donations in Europe are typically our major sponsor. They are the largest contribution. We do also have people who pay to help support it, and we have a couple sponsors already. Looking for more, but it's worth saying that people who attend find enough value that even though you're able to attend and get a T-shirt and everything for free, a lot of people do choose to support the conference in the registration process.
That nobody is turned away because they can't pay, because there isn't a price on the website, which is another thing that I think is very unusual and positive. There's no sort of pay to win by sponsors who turn up and take over half the sessions promoting whatever tool they've thought up that morning.
That's right. That's right, and that's a really good point because for PJ and I, we actually when we started the conference, we created a nonprofit called the Open Information Foundation, and our mission was like how to make information freely available rather than having it locked up in expensive conferences, and that was part of the motivation for the event. And so I thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, it being free is certainly part of the mission for what will be our 42nd event.
Good grief. Okay, I got to get more T-shirts. Right. So listeners, get your travel plans in place. Get yourself to Helsinki. We would sure like to see you there. Assuming that we both manage to get there, we typically record at least one, maybe more episodes of the podcast. So you can even be on the podcast if you'd like to be. And we'd sure like to meet you, debate with you, and maybe you'll join my movement to get rid of AI in the title. We'll see how that works out. I'm planning protest signs and some fun chants. So join me for that. Join Jeffrey to explore AI, and join the conference to have a really good time learning an awful lot from some very smart people. That's our recommendation this week. Of course, you can also keep in touch with us if you can't get to Helsinki, and you can do that by either writing to us to ask us questions, or pose challenges, or to tell us that we're wrong about something. And you can do that at agileconversations.com, where you'll find email and Instagram and who knows what else that we're using. I don't think we have open claw instances that are on clawbot, molt, something, whatever it's called, but I'm sure we will soon. And you can get in touch with us any of those ways at agileconversations.com. Of course, the other way to keep in touch is to come back again next week when we'll have another episode of Troubleshooting Agile. Thanks, Jeffrey.
Thanks, Squirrel.